Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. It's fantastic to have you here because I've taken it upon myself to commit to this ridiculous task, and that is making a knife with basic tools, making a knife with no power tools. I hope that this gives you a little bit of extra impetus to get out there into your workshops and make stuff no matter the equipment that you have, because I tell you, the joy that you'll get from making something even as small as this is going to be rather fantastic, and I highly recommend making stuff. It's a huge amount of fun, so I'm very excited to get stuck in and continue working on this. So here's where we are right now. We have a flat surface on our blade. We've got a nice little bit of a distal taper going on in the thing. But in making this flat surface, we destroyed our nice transition here into our bolster. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to give that a little bit of a fix-up. We've got a file that we've ground one flat surface on. It's a round file. We put a flat surface on it. Thank you, ClickSpring, for the filing tutorial video on YouTube. And we'll start filing that shoulder back, cleaning it up. Okay, so we've got these little bits cleaned up. It's now time for us to do the plunge lines and form the bevels. Whoa, that side is way cleaner. Ogly doggly, the bevel is roughed in. We've got our plunge lines squared up. It is certainly not as clean as I would really like, but I do think it's now time for us to move on to the next step, which is making a proper isolation between our bolster and our tang. Ah! No, look what I just did. Whoa. It's trouble because I'm putting sideways pressure on here. So every time I miss, I've got all this inertia pulling me over to the side. Check it out. Look at that Somehow we've about got that transition in there, and I've decided to go for having this little forwards angle on it, similar to our transition here from the blade into the bolster, which I think will look rather nice. You'll notice this has a downwards curve. That handle, you know, we're going to be having the bulk of the handle come down slightly, and so that'll better line it up with the handle block that we use. Aside from that, there are a few things I want to tweak. I want to tweak this big mass here because we have some deep gouges in there. I also want to tweak our transitions into the bolster where it's just a little bit rough, and then tweak the bevel too, because we want to get this thing as close to done with the files. We don't want to have to be doing any serious amounts of stock removal post heat treat. So, we got this thing hand sanded, we got a dirty 120 grit on it. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. The bevels are in there, the edge is rather thin, so we don't have to do much stock removal on it when we're done with our heat treat. Our bolster is roughly squared up, but I'm not too concerned about having to touch that up later, because we're not actually going to harden the bolster. I know the point of this was to do a project where it's using minimal tools, and of course you're going to say, well, Alec, the forge isn't minimal tools. That's a big old thing that took you a while to build, and it's rather complex. You don't have to use a forge. You could use one of those little Burnzomatic torches. You could warm up that edge, get it to non-magnetic, and quench it from there. Wait, hang on a second, but then again, I forged this project, so if you're trying to emulate this, you would have a forge already. Okay, we're going to be using the forge to heat treat, and it's not a problem. Like usual, I have a piece of tube in the forge. So we're going to stick this in the forge. We're going to stick it in the tube, rather. And now that it's sat in there, it'll just gently get warmed up nice and evenly, more evenly than it would otherwise. And we want it to heat up gently. That's an important thing. Our edge is so thin that it's very liable to overheat and do damage to the steel right where it counts, right at the edge. So that's why the tube is helpful. That's why I've got the forge turned down lower. And that's why also I'm going to stop talking to the camera and I'm going to go and pay attention to the steel before I damage it. Oh no, what have I done? I'm joking, it's all good. Yeah. I hope I am joking. There we go. Temper colors starting to form. Post-forging, I did do 3 normalizing cycles. A normalizing cycle is to normalize the stresses throughout the thing and shrink the grain size to make sure that we make an edge that's as strong as possible and will last as long as possible. This steel is not ideal blade steel. This is 1055. So it's about 0.3% lower carbon than we'd really like. You know, the best steel for a forge heat treat like this on a blade is going to be more like a 1080 steel. Here, with the 1055, it's a little low on the carbon scale, so we've got to be really careful that we keep that grain size small, make sure that we cool it off nice and fast to get the hardness where we want it. Now, Alec, why are you using poor materials for this? Well, the reason is because despite the fact that all my merchandise ships worldwide, and you can get yours at alecsteelshop.com, like this incredible Pilkington Power Hammer t-shirt. Look, we match. Despite the fact that all my products ship worldwide, I seem to not think that there exists worldwide shipping when it comes to buying my own stuff. All right, let's see if this thing is hot and we'll pull it out of the heat. Okay, there we go. You see how careful we're going to have to be. We'll do 2 normalizing cycles. That one got a little hotter than I'd like. This right here is lots of future fun projects on the channel. This is how the steel that I used to make my Damascus comes in. Sheets like this. And of course, as you know, I used 1080 steel as one of the steels in my Damascus. That right here, that is 1080 steel. It comes in an 1/8 inch thick section. And that right there is the only 1080 steel you can buy in the country. So this is a roundabout way of saying, don't be a numpty like me and use poor materials. Plan ahead. Buy good materials, then you don't have to use poor materials. And you can make sure that you end up with a finished product that isn't just a learning exercise, but instead make a knife that you know is going to hold a great edge and will last for generations. And that 1055 is not going to be as easy to get to that point as it would be with a better steel. Now, of course, you know the drill by now because you're subscribed. Hit that subscribe button if you're not. We're going to take a piece of steel and we're putting it here in the oil because that's going to warm up the oil. And wouldn't you believe it? Even though we're trying to cool something down, warm oil will cool down that steel faster than cold oil. I made these tongs when I was 13 years old. That's good fun, isn't it? Use some of the first tools that you ever made. So this is going back in the forge. We're going to do 1 more normalizing cycle. And again, the reason for that is I just overheated it on the last one. It's just a little too hot, so we're going to take extra care now. Here's a fun trick. This is a pyrometer, so we can actually see what the temperature is inside there where the blade is. I got this thing off eBay. We're aiming for about 820 Celsius, that is. Right now we're at 1465 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 800 degrees Celsius. Uh-oh, glitch. So the tip looks like it's a little warmer than that, so we should be pretty good. Still climbing. So out we go. One more normalizing cycle done. Okay, it's now in there heating up. Ready for the quench. Now when it comes to actually doing the quench, the plan is to quench just the edge. Instead of a normal quench where I plunge the whole thing in, we're going to be putting just that front edge in there, working up and down, getting mostly just the edge, and none of the bolster in the oil cooling down. Right, here we go. So much for it being just the edge. Went a little deeper than I thought I would. Oh, look at that beautiful gray on the surface of the steel. It's always a good sign. Okay. So there we go. That's that beautiful gray that I was mentioning, and that's the martensite, I believe. So it's a good sign that we have fully formed martensite everywhere where our edge is, and that's probably because that oil was hot and our cross-section is thin, allowing us to cool it off very fast. So despite the low carbon percentage, I'm hoping that this will still be hard enough. But hard is good, but it also means brittle. So now what we've got to do is we're going to put it in the oven, and we'll put that puppy in there. We'll leave it about 2 hours. While that's happening, I'm going to take this little opportunity of time to continue working on that. This is a billet to Damascus that I started a few weeks ago, or no, probably a week or so ago when I had some time just like this, where I've got to wait on something. And what better thing to do when you've got to wait on something than make up a billet to Damascus? So in we go, into the grinding room, PPE and all. We're going to grind this puppy up, then cut it up, and go back in the fire for some more welding. Rightio, we've got that forged out. You'll notice over here in the power hammer, we were running a kiss block. Now, a kiss block basically means we have a piece of steel in there that stops the dies going down any further. One other thing to notice is look how warm those dies are. I need to do something about that. But here we are, back at the filing and sanding bench with this out of the tempering oven. I really like that black oxide finish here on our bolster area and all of that. It'd be nice to be able to keep some of that. That'll also save me a good bit of sanding. What we're now going to do is we're going to see how hard that edge is. This is some mild steel. The edge hasn't been sharpened, of course, but it is only about 5/1000ths of an inch thick or so, so it's thin enough that we could hopefully damage it if it wasn't hard enough and properly tempered. This feels weird. I've spent a lot of time on this. I shouldn't be trying to damage it. You know what? I'm going to call that good. I am going to call that good. It is not the most ideal steel, but I think it'll do the job for us. Look at that. No edge rollover, no chipping. This is mild steel bar, 1055 steel. This is my favorite part. Yay, hand sanding! Oh, how I love to hand sand. How I love to hand sand. So I've got my blade hand sanded. Only went to 320 or so with then some nice full strokes. I don't want to go too high because my plan is to go for a full cold blue black oxide finish on it. And so without further ado, we're going to do just that. There we go. About half an hour later or so, it looks like my solution of cold ox is getting a little less potent. The beauty of the finish is all in the oiling. The whole point of this finish is it creates this very slightly permeable surface layer so the oil can get into it, and it's the oil that protects the steel by sticking into the pores that solution makes. And it's the oil that makes it really pop. This will have to be touched up because I know I'm going to be damaging this in the process, but it's super easy to touch up this finish. So this is now ready for a handle. We've been putting a lot of elbow grease into this project. We're going to be putting a lot more elbow grease in because we're going to be needing to use this to make the handle. And thank goodness we've got some elbow grease t-shirts. Oh yes, we've got elbow grease t-shirts, the finest elbow grease t-shirts ever made. It's the finest elbow grease that's ever been made, and it's now on a t-shirt, ready for you to start putting some elbow grease in your own work and having a great old time while you do it. There is also free shipping on the website, so I hope you go and make the most of that by grabbing yourself some steel merch. It has been a pleasure bringing you along this journey. And I can't wait to see you tomorrow as we make the handle for this thing, again with hand tools. Thank you for watching, hit subscribe if you're new, and I'm going to see you tomorrow. Bye.